All right, we'll queue up Mike Evans. He's our final speaker here for today. So, known Mike for, 6, 7 years, as long as we've worked with Kelly Garret. So for those of you that don't know, Kelly's farm is up in Denison, Iowa area in the Les Hills. Highly incredible terrain if you've never been there. It's like 80-foot hills, grass-back terraces. It's all side hill combines, but some of the deepest soil I've ever worked in. Like same soil from 0 to 40 foot. So it's incredible dirt, but it has its challenges. And drip irrigation has been a good fit for their farm. So I'll let Mike share what they're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Mike Evans. Been working with Kelly for, gosh, I got to think about it now, since 2016 when we met, and then really fully on his farm since 2019. Do we have a clicker? I forgot that piece, so I would be.
For a little bit, kind of keep it up.
Yeah, I'll work with it. Maybe. There we go. There's the hills. This is a backdrop, but yeah, I co-own Integrated Ag Solutions with Kelly and another person named Mike Wingrove. So we run the business. We started in the fall of 2020, kind of when Kelly and I first started really working together pretty hardcore. And we're just an independent small retail, do a lot of product sales, but also consulting. And we're really driven on data testing and validation. You know, we try a lot of different things. Kelly obviously be involved in XtremeAg and that whole group there. There's a lot of testing that gets involved. They'd like to try new things and be on the, not so much the cutting edge, but the bleeding edge is what I used to call it in the industry. You know, it's pretty intriguing. But Kurt kind of wanted to talk about what we do at Kelly's farm, and I'm the lead agronomist there, so I do a lot of the planning, do a lot of the analysis, do a lot of the trial work for Kelly. So just kind of paint a broad brush for what we do on Kelly's farm, specifically is irrigated fields. So we'll talk about kind of the plans that we have through the year, and then really kind of go into fertigation with his drip irrigation. Kelly's got about 370 acres of drip she got 2 well heads, and then he's got a mobile trailer that do 3 farms. So when everything gets ramped up, we're about 2 guys dedicated to keeping everything moving out there at times, and a lot of phone calls to Kurt. So keeping things rolling. But here's kind of what we do, kind of break into 4 segments: fall prep, spring app, in season, what we do in season, and then we'll talk about fertigation. But you know, everything we do, we kind of built it around all our knowledge over the last few years. And fall prep, once the combines are done, Kelly's got his plant food product. If you've heard him speak, or he talks about it all the time. So we lay that down as a soil amendment. Really is what it ends up being. That sulfur application is really important to our soils out there. Kind of interesting, those, you know, Wendell and Kurt talking about it. We either have high cal or high mag, and we fight those two all day long out there. If it ain't high cal, it's high mag, and really high mag becomes the bigger problem for us at times in certain areas. And magnesium is a really tough element to work with in the soil. It just doesn't want to go anywhere. So that 80 to 90 pounds of sulfur we apply in the fall, we're really working on amending on that specific element in the soil. And on these irrigated farms, we're putting on a low rate of anhydrous. We've done enough studies on anhydrous. We don't put a lot on them. We put about 80 pounds is about all we'll put on. We've done stuff with 0. That tends to not be the best option, but we'll put 80 pounds on. It's gone from when we started, we were putting on, I think one year we put on 300 pounds, you know, trying to drive yield, and it created a lot of issues for us. So we've kind of went for both ends, but we've kind of settled in there. And one new thing we did this year, because Kelly's 100% no-till, there's still compaction things that happen on a farm. He added a soil aerator because that allows us to keep the no-till. It's one of those pieces of equipment we can use. And we ran it last year, probably won't run it for a couple of years yet, but that helps get oxygen in the soil, kind of break some compaction layers that we have in the field. And why do we do this? Kind of go over that again. But spring application, kind of go over why we do what we do. Our furrow program's kind of evolved over the last 2 years. You know, we used to be a phosphorus-based starter, you know, a few things here, and that was about it. And now we're really kind of full swing the other way. We start with calcium. The guys were talking about it earlier. Calcium's important in furrow for many reasons, but calcium as a whole, they call it the trucker of minerals. So once you be able to get the available calcium flowing in the plant, you're going to bring like 7 nutrients with it as well. So we established it early. Goes with the soil biology piece too, that early season initiation. You know, everything for us anyways up at our geography, it's cold usually when we get started. Soil's a little slow. So we want to put that in there. Most people will put phosphorus in there, which is fine. We've done both, but we lay on calcium because we've done the side-by-sides, and it just seems like it's more important to have the calcium in there for us. And we went through more micronutrients in furrow. 1 for germination, 2 for all the enzymatic reactions that happen to get that plant up and out of the ground. So we run a lot of, you know, magnesium, iron, boron, zinc, copper. All those are in furrow as we're running with the calcium. And then we've played with a lot of biologicals. And we work with a company out of Illinois now. We're pretty well aligned and partnered. And it's called BioAg Management is the company's name. Clint Freeze and Luke Holst are the 2 guys that own that company, and they've been making their own biology for, I don't know, 7-10 years now, brewing it and studying it, and have gotten us a lot of good information on just that whole soil biology. I won't go in depth on it, but what we believe in furrow and what's going on with soil, to kind of piggyback off what Kurt and Wendell were talking about. We do some soil testing for biology. Company we've used a lot of them. We use XtremeAg now, but looking at the pathogens in your soil, it goes back to what Wendell says. We do a lot of applications, and we've been just as guilty as anybody to hurt our soil biology. That's the positive thing for us. And what we have created is a soil biome that's more pathogen loaded than soil beneficial loaded, if you want to look at it. And we see a lot of fusarium, pythium, phytophthora, all those things you fight. And unfortunately, from what we've seen, the seed treatments aren't enough. And the only way to overcome all those pathogens, we call it the law of exclusion, right? It's basically he who has the most wins. So if you got 100 pathogens and you're only got 20 to fight them, because biology will eat each other, right, in the soil. They're very interactive. There's a lot going on down there. A lot we don't know. But if we can outcompete the pathogens and overtake them with our beneficials, we'll be better off. And this is the product, when we say soil health, plant defense, that's why we're putting this in furrow. Because we're going to try to outcompete everything that's negative for us as best we can and win that battle early on in the season, and then just keep going through the season. So that's why we use what we use. And the next thing that we have learned through Clint and Luke is not only is the biology important, but the food you feed the biology is just as important. Because they're animals, like Wendell said. They're going to eat and grow and multiply. But if you do not have the right food for them to grow and multiply, they'll be there for a while, but they'll go dormant and eventually lose out. So we use like a product that Clint and Luke have built called AminoCarb. It's designed to specifically grow the populations we want. So that's what we put in furrow. That's what we changed to this year after some research. And then our 2x2, we run that on the planter. Pretty simple. We just add a spike of nitrogen in there early season and sulfur, and we buffer it with a humic acid. So nothing too special there. In season, we're typically herbicide pass. We'll run some hormones in there, mostly to help with herbicide injury, herbicide digestion within the plant, and also help the plant kind of keep its hormonal balance going. And then we'll run a multi-nutritional, mostly because there's 8 things on the trailer already, and if I asked the guys to put 4 more things in there, they'd probably hang me off the side of the semi. So we just put a simple and try to cover all bases, especially when the plant's that young, just to give it another shot with something and keep it rolling as we're putting that herbicide application down. And it's an important time of the year where we're putting rows around best we can. So not a whole lot there. Then we'll go into area applications. We can't do a lot of side dress. If you saw those combines, we can't run a wide dropper, a top dress rigs. The terrain does not allow us to do that. So we're relegated to drone applications or an aerial application. And I think we finished up, I think I loaded the plane Saturday was our last pass, 3rd pass on some of the corn that's been doing pretty good. So we've ran it a 3rd time with the plane. But we really believe, reproduction is your time you guys make money. And sometimes it's this time of year and you're just like, I want to get to harvest because it's been a long season already. But this is where we make our bushels. Now, like this year we've had the rain. That's going to help out a lot, but we're trying to keep the plant balanced, healthy, keep that engine running and keep that microbe system, kind of what Weddle talked about. It's pretty spot on. If you go down that wormhole, there's a lot to it, and that rhizophagy cycle is very important. So that's kind of what we do in season. And the other part on our irrigated farms, we're trying to complement what we're trying to do on irrigation. And we haven't had to run it this much this year, but when we've been trying to complement it as well. Because we believe that those 3 things right there, plant balancing, plant defense, and root stimulation late in season is where we need to be at. Then we'll get to fertigation. This has been a painful journey for us at Kelly's, and I'll kind of go through it here, spend quite a bit of time talking about some of the new things we're doing this year. But really it's managing our water, and we used to just irrigate because it was water, right? And we need water, and we're going to grow a great crop because it's water. And that was a great concept, but as one of my good buddies told me, he goes, as you're irrigating, your soil becomes your water. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, think about it. He goes, top 6 inches of your soil, what, 1 million pounds? And at Kelly's wellhead, at his main farm, we're irrigating at 450 gallons per minute. So if you do the math out, in an hour, we're putting on 225,000 pounds of water. So we're 1/4 of the soil weight we're putting out as water. And you start thinking about it, and you're like, yeah, we probably should pay more attention to this. And it's come to fruition here. And then the other part is buffering the soil. So we want to keep the bad stuff at bay as much as we can, because naturally the soil is what it is, and we're not going to change it over a short period of time. And try to make what we can available that's important. And that's really all that is. So I just put this is Kelly's water out of his wellhead at his home. I could spend a while on all the bad stuff, because my first concern is everything. I mean, you look at this and you just go, But really, pH, you'll see that 7.6. Alkalinity's up there. And we used to watch, all the other stuff that, we really I didn't even know what I was looking at until I learned a lot about it. We were worried about potassium. We're like, oh, we don't got enough potassium in the water to, because we want that mineral. But really it came down to sodium and the sulfates. Kurt, have you found anybody else as high as sulfates as Kelly?
Not that high. Look at his bicarb and we talked on soil or water this morning just a little bit. Check out the TDS on that.
So we built our building just across the road, and we put a well in too, about as deep as Kelly's. We're a little shallower, and we pump all our water up there. And now in our building where we do our blending, we have a 10,000 gallon tank that automatically fills. And out of that well, and we've done a lot of water tests with the lab we work with, and the guy at the lab's like, does your water smell? And I'm like, no, I didn't never even thought about it. Well, we got a garden hose hooked up to the well to spray stuff off. By God, the other day I was looking, I'm like, what smells like rotten eggs? And he's like, he was right. He's like, that sulfate's high, but it's also a benefit. So we'll kind of get to the sulfates there in a minute here. So I show this is a picture from a field a couple years ago, where we were fertigating. We were doing a bunch of stuff. Kelly was filming Chasing Francis, basically. This is where this comes from. And this crop, bottom of the canopy looked great. We were just so stoked. And then this was taken a week prior to this photo. Within a week, corn changed. Now, we did a few apps in there. I don't think it helped it. But we started irrigating heavy, and this is what happened to our crop. Kelly's like, I don't know. I've never seen that before in my life. So did some testing, and I thought it was our application. Now we learned, I know basically what it is. We started dumping all this sodium in the soil. And it happened last year too when we were so dry. We kicked the irrigation on, and I should have took a picture. I'm terrible at taking pictures. I should just have a GoPro on my head all day. But the side hill at his farm, going up that hill, Kurt, 2 days. Looked like it was in the more severe drought. Looked worse than the fields across in the dry land. It came out of it eventually, but it shocked that crop. And I'm just like, what in the world is going on? So this was a huge problem because we're like, what are we doing? Are we going backwards? You know, it was a concern. So, and then this is the roots. You may not be able to see it good where you guys are at, but it just fried the roots of the plant, just smoked them. And like, I thought we had disease. I thought we had issues, but it was really the issues we had with the water. So to tell a short story, we've done a lot of different things testing. It's led us to a lab that does a little bit of different thing. I'm gonna put this out there. This is our first year dealing with it, so it's a disclaimer. We haven't got all the way through the year yet, but I think the data that we pulled this year so far is pretty intriguing to look at. And how they handle stuff. They do a lot of irrigation out west. They actually deal with cannabis. I mean, they could talk to you about cannabis till you're blue in the face, and they understand irrigating, you know, all that stuff. So they're very apt in irrigation, and they measure soil a little differently, and it's intriguing. They use a water paste extraction. So basically that's just not to get too technical, but they just take, you know, 1 part water or 1 part soil, 5 parts water, and put it in a slurry, and then they let it sieve out. And it's trying to replicate what's plant available, technically, to the plant at that moment in time. It's a snapshot of that point in time in that area. So, and the other side of it is we can measure irrigation water changes pretty instantly with that, and the fertigation changes the soil. So basically what we've done is we take our soil samples, we send it to the lab, we send our irrigation water to the lab, and then what we fertigate, which is Kelly's plant food, because it's just there and it's an acid and we can cut that water down, to the lab. And they'll do these extractions based on our inclusion rates. So we tell them we're running at 450 gallons per minute. They do the amount of water that needs to be there. And then we'll tell them we're running 150 gallon an hour of plant food with the water, and they'll do that and they'll give you the report. So this is what it looks like, a little fuzzy with there. But first, if you ever just send soil, they'll use deionized water or distilled water to give you a baseline. So this is Kelly's soil using just straight distilled water. And what I like about it, they give you EH, pH, or EC, pH, and they'll break it into the anions and the cations. The cations is probably the more intriguing part. So you get 2 different values here. And you got to think of the top ones as concentration, how much you have in the soil, and the bottom, the percentages is your, I just lost it, concentration. This is what happens when intensity. I figured it out. That's the intensity of your nutrients and a base percentage, right? So these are the ranges. You can kind of see them, hopefully, you want to be in based on their data sets they have going back for quite a while. So calcium's crappy, potassium ain't good, magnesium's way too high, almost double, and our sodium's out of range too. So just using distilled water, we're already in a bad position, right? So you send the irrigation water in, and this becomes way different. So look at your chloride. Our chloride's high. So on the anions, they say 15 parts per million here is ideal, just as a baseline. They haven't given me a sulfur number yet, but they rank them, 1, 2, 3 of importance. So that's how they rank them. Our irrigation water tanks our chloride, which is probably all right. We have enough chloride in the soil already. Jacks our sulfur up, and look where our phosphorus went. Gone. Just disappears. If we just run our water, we lose all our phosphorus potentially available in the plant, for the plant. The cations, this is where that sulfur comes in. The high sulfur just amends that calcium, takes the mag down. One negative takes potassium out of the solution. And then your percentages, we bring our calcium into the line, potassium disappears, magnesium pretty well comes in line. Our big culprit, sodium. All that sodium, if you go back and read that, I'll go back quick. Of these cations, these are all your cations, what's number 2 in parts per million? Just barely behind calcium in that water. So our irrigation water is helping us amend a lot, but it's bringing a bad culprit with it. It's sodium. And we all know what sodium is not good in a lot of cases when it's too high. The plant needs it, but it's too high is too bad. Just like us humans. Get too much sodium in you got heart issues, right? So then the next thing is like, well, we'll add our fertigation. We'll add the plant food. That's got to help us too, right? Well, here's the plant food with our rates. We bring our phosphorus up because plant food has a lot of phosphorus, so we're helping ourselves that way. Nothing for potassium. Mag's good. Our sodium doesn't really do a whole lot different change. So where we thought we were fertigating with plant food and helping our water, we were still having issues because of that sodium load is so high. And this is your cations are all balanced, right? Calcium, magnesium are double charged. Potassium and sodium are single charges in the soil. And they're trying to compete for space to connect to a negative charge. So you want these to somewhat balance out. And that's the challenge we have, and that's where we're at today. So it becomes like, how are we going to attack this is when we start seeing it. So it's managing the cations, like I said. We have a lack of potassium. We have an abundance of sodium. And those are 2 single-charged cations that are trying to compete for space. We want potassium. We obviously know the value of potassium in the plant. And we don't want a lot of sodium. So how do we combat that? And how do we buffer out the rest of that sodium? Because we need to get it out of there. We need to get it to where it's not dominating the soil like it is. So here's the program we instilled this year, and I hope to have some good data coming in. This will be the year I wish we had a drought because we'd be running irrigation all the time and have some good data, but we've been shutting it off and on. It comes with its own challenges. We solubilize the potassium chloride in the plant food. It's created some issues of clogging filters, and we're learning how to handle it. But we still run the plant food at our normal rate, but we're melting that KCl in there. Now we'll get an uptake in chloride in it, which is fine because we're amending all that chloride out. It's flushing it out anyway, so we're not going to overload the soil with chloride. But we're trying to compete with the sodium with the potassium to exchange that out. So when we do this, and I forgot to put this up there, but when we add the potassium chloride into the plant food, it puts potassium in a dominant position over that sodium in there. So our thought process is if we have a more dominant cation of potassium in that soil, we can try to outcompete our issues that we're bringing up from the subsurface. Oops. And then the high concentrated fulvic acid we add into the truck before we put it in the tanks to buffer out all that sodium. So that's what we're trying to do. I haven't noticed. I've been gone a lot, so I haven't been able to get in the field. But I have noticed since we run irrigation, we're not getting that shock shock and awe effect of that crop yet, but I plan Monday to go out and do some more sampling. But it's basic chemistry, really. We're trying to outcompete stuff, and that's how we're trying to mend the soil, because all that available calcium that we're bringing along is really important for us. If you go down some research, plants need calcium every day, 24/7, available calcium. They need it constantly. That is so important for cell structure, cell integrity, cell elasticity, all that stuff that builds, like when I was growing up a kid, drink your milk because you're gonna have big, strong bones for later in life. All that, same thing for plants. So where we have struggles with calcium availability already, we want to have that calcium available. So we need to irrigate, but we don't need all that sodium. So I told Kelly, I was pretty adamant. I said, we do not turn that irrigation on unless we're fertigating. Because if we spend 2 days doing this, we're going backwards and we might not catch up. Because if you look back on these samples, this is the environment the crop's living in. That's where the roots, the biology, all that stuff live in, is what we're looking at. So hopefully we get somewhere. It's a game of math too. I mean, I told Curry, I need like a 500 gallon per hour fertigation pump, but he ain't got one for me yet. But that's where we're at today. That's what we're doing. It's been a long road coming, learning all this stuff. Feel like I'm back in college learning chemistry all day long, but it's important. So with that, anybody got questions or anything, I'd be glad to answer them on anything.
How high is that concentration?
Ours is a 20%. We're dumping straight in. The guy I got it from said I should cut it down to 6%. We played our cards and just dump it in. I mean, we're putting semi-load 6,000 gallons of plant food. We're putting in 10 gallons of that fulvic. We try to base it off of a per acre rate, because there really isn't no measurement of this part's 1 gallon per 100 gallons or anything like that. So pretty potent stuff. Probably the only thing I could find that was that high concentration because fulvic acid and why we use it, it's a natural sodium buffer. If you had a salt spot in your field, get a dry fulvic and put it out there, because its natural properties remediate that sodium in the soil.
On a regular soil test, were you seeing the sodium levels creep up on those, or had you noticed that yet or not?
No. And we couldn't, it just never caught it. A lot of the soil tests you run today, and we still run them too on our farm on a broad base, are like a Haney test, right? Still runs a light acid to break it down. So you're still getting a little bit of a noise in there, if that makes sense. Because that acid still has some power to pull stuff off that may be a little bit unnatural, that makes sense. If you took a Malic 3, it's such a strong acid, it's tearing everything apart just to get what it can out. And Haney's a little bit lighter on some things. So I've never seen it. And also the soil, I think, how long's Kelly had that well there running? Since 2016, right? That was the first one you put in, right? At his home place. So we've been pumping that sodium in there for so long that it's built up in the soil, and it takes water to flush it out, but we're losing game. And this is the first time we've ever been able to visualize it this way, because we're using our water and our fertigation tactics.
What's the rest of your nitrogen strategy? So you said 80 pounds anhydrous. There's a little bit on at the planter. Then how do you spoon feed the rest of that out? And what's your goal for nitrogen use efficiency?
Nitrogen, we top dress, one of the few spots we top dress with a little urea, probably like 40 pounds. It was about B10, I think they got in there and did that. Just a little bit of splash to get it to reproductive, and that's it. We haven't applied any nitrogen to any of that yet. So I mean, as far as use efficiency, I guess I don't really pay attention to it as much as I probably should. You know, we'll have, what would that be? We probably have 80 pounds, 30 with the planter. We'll have 150 pounds of nitrogen out there. We'll see where we end up. You know, soil provides a lot more than most of us get credit for at certain times. You know, there's moments this year with the weather the way it was, we were a little concerned maybe we shorted ourselves in some areas, but the weather turned around and away it went. So we just don't apply a lot anymore if we don't have to, because most of the nitrogen sources that you run, and nitrous is no different, but that's the only option we got, can have a lot of negative effect. You put too much on, you lose the soil's natural ability to create it itself. And it's hard to measure because the soil itself can create all kinds of amino forms of nitrogen. I mean, it's a wormhole you can go down, but it we've went to those aero apps more of micronutrients, carbon, phosphorus, and potassium at certain times. Because the one thing we've learned in our testing is, like, once you ramp up nitrogen, if you don't have the phos to follow it, you're going to be lagging.
And maybe just for context for everybody, what's your yield goal? Like, what are you shooting for?
We're still trying to get over 400 on the
You've
irrigation.
been hitting, where have you been at in the past?
What was it last year? 388. It's probably our top end. Is where we've plateaued for the last few years. I don't know if we'll get 400 this year. Spring was really tough on us. Early season was not an ideal situation. All those hills, we still had too much water, but that's where we're headed. You know, we're also focusing on the whole double ear thing. I mean, we can go down that, but trying to figure that out a little bit. Having some success, like Bacher Farm, we've done pretty good there, I think. It'd be interesting to see what happens.
Do you want the double ears?
We want to go down this. There's a big debate, and you know, people are like, "Oh, you don't want double ears." And people are like, "You need double ears," and you know, I mean, the plant can put on 6 ears. So, you know, first time we ever did the double ear thing is like I was walking at that home place, and the planter had skips from here to that, you know, that crack to that crack, right? And there's a plant in the middle, and it had 5 ears on it in the irrigation field, right? And just Kelly and I are looking at it and going, "Man, we really suck." You know, it's like, this corn plant can produce so much, and we only produce from 1 ear. So that's kind of spurred us from that point on. I'm curious. I mean, curiosity, right? You want to try it. Is it a long term? Everywhere we're going to try to do it? I don't know, but I think there's value in it. Is it a mass production thing? I don't know. But if we don't try, we don't know either.
And where are you at on plant population?
Most everything, like on the dryland stands, averages 30,000. Irrigations anywhere from 34 to 38. We've stopped plant. I told Kelly, you know, he tried the 50,000 deal. I remember that. The dirt, you know, flattened it, everything, but the derecho smoked that. I told him one day, I said, we're not going to go push populations till we get this 36 figured out. I mean, what's the point? I mean, we got to start back here and work our way up. So that's kind of our philosophy. We still do 38, you know, in spots, 36, just hybrid specific type stuff, but.
What organic battery normally in your soil?
2 to 4. This stuff off this particular farm is probably a 4 to 5. It's a little more flatter. I mean, the creek's probably a quarter-mile away. The creek that runs by Kelly's house, so it's a little more of a riverbedish type thing. But yeah, a lot of 2 to 4s.
anything found? Is there any tricks or anything you found to keep that second year?
Timing and weather. You know, you can walk. Kelly strips a lot of his planter passes, you know, typically, and you can see some hybrids. It don't take long for them to lose it. They don't take long at all. Others, they'll make an effort. So hybrids are important, I think, to bet their makeup. After that, it's timing of weather. This year, you know, we got really hot for about 3 days, and I think that early corn that we had pretty good promise on it really hurt it. And I don't know how. If I had a crystal ball to know what it's coming, I'd apply something in front of it. You just don't know what the weather's going to do. We just didn't have facilities and the capability at that point in time. We didn't have our drone at that point to go make an application, unfortunately. You know, we got a drone now, we're doing a bunch of apps, but I think it's key times, kind of to Wendell's point with the bar on. I mean, I think there's certain things you got to do before that stage hits and to rep that plan up to not go, oh crap. But I don't have a 100% answer for you. That's just the theory.
What kind of seeds are you dealing with?
15 to 20 probably be probably a good overall catch-all.
And what are you doing in those high mag spots? What's your high mag remediation?
Plant food. We got to put more calcium on. It's the only way to compete with mag is more calcium. So we're going to come in with some products this fall. We've done some liming in the past. A few other products we're going to try to see if that helps. There's some liquid products out there that claim a lot, so I'm probably going to spray a couple of those fields that, you know, they claim to act as ag lime. So we'll see. We'll try those. That's really the only way. You know, if you take a double positive off the negative soil colloid, something's going to affix to that point. So you got to have something. If you don't have calcium there to recharge to that negative point, it's just going to relatch onto mag, because your mags in those situations there's more mag than there is calcium. So
Other questions? I've got a few more. I'm trying to decide if I should ask this or not, but so I know you guys have moved past tissue sampling and are now doing SAP. Maybe give us just a 5-minute or 2-minute version of what you've learned and why you've moved away from tissue sampling and what you feel like SAP is doing for you.
these guys want ice cream, Kurt.
I guess let me ask this: is that still your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, so they're two different forms of sampling, right? I mean, so the easiest way to explain them is if you take a tissue sample, you go out there and grab the leaf, you send the whole ear, let's just say ear leaf, right? You send the whole, put them in bags, send them off to the lab. And they can take 5 days to get there, a day, whatever, they get to the lab. Well, the lab gets them, they dry them out, they reduce them to an ash pile, and they do their extractions off that. So you're taking everything from structure, cells, vacuoles, phloem, xylem, everything is in that score you get back, which isn't bad. It's a good measure of accumulation in your plant and where you're at, how you're accumulating everything. SAP is a little different. So lab we work with, you take that ear leaf out in the field, you take the middle 4 to 5 inches, you cut up all that part, you put them in a Ziploc bag, put them in a cooler, and you ship them off next day. Because it's one thing with SAP, because if you get an environmental change or a change in there, the vacuoles will burst, and then you get a false reading, because you'll get that fluid out of the vacuoles, and that's going to give you false readings. You want to keep that thing in a homeostasis, they call it, position. They get it. The lab we work with has a specific tool. They've refined, patent pending, all that good stuff, but it's basically all it gets is the sap out of the xylem phloem. And they measure that, and your xylem phloem's your highway and railway, right, in your plant. It's moving nutrients here, there, and everywhere. And that's a nutrient flow in the plant. So then you go down the path of mobile nutrients versus immobile nutrients. So phosphorus is a mobile nutrient. better yet, nitrogen, right? Everybody sees plants fire up from the bottom, right? You get the yellow leaves, the plants. That's nitrogen remobilized from the bottom of the plant, fire going to where the most important sink at that time is probably the ear. So the plant's taking it saying, hey, I'm deficient. I got to get the ear filled. I'm moving nitrogen there. And calcium is an immobile nutrient. Calcium will get there and stay. Plant's going to take it from here to there, and once it gets there, it's done. Plant can't reinitiate it and move it back to the plant. So that's when I say plant needs calcium 24 hours, 7 days a week, because it can't, and it needs it all the time. And to tag off what Wendell said about boron, there's synergy between calcium and boron. So if you have good boron levels, it's going to take the calcium to the farthest point of that plant. If you don't have good boron levels, it's going to get bottlenecked somewhere because that boron has to take that calcium in the plant somewhere. So that's what you'll see in those reports when you get them back. You'll see if you're deficient, excessive, you can see the flow in your plant. Where it's going where, especially with the immobile nutrients, sulfur, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, both nitrogen, and then you get all your micros. So there's a little bit more that comes back to you as far as information. They'll measure total sugars, Brix, EC, pH in the plant, those things. Nitrogen's nice because that's the biggest difference we saw right out the gate was you get total in tissues, which is good. You get your aminos, all the stuff that creates nitrogen is there, but they break it out in ammonium and nitrate. So you're getting your two forms. Ammonium's the positive side, nitrate's the negative side. And then you got your total N, which is similar to what tissue is. But that tells you if you're high in nitrates, you're not processing the nitrate in the plant. And if you're not processing the nitrate in the plant, you'll get a plant that goes this high, and then you get a plant that dies young. So that's what we've seen. It's just more in depth, more of telling the story. Because if we can keep that nitrate pretty well down, because nitrate, the plant will outcompete, nitrate will outcompete going in the plant like over phosphorus. It's an anion, so when they're doing that exchange in the soil, that microbe goes out there and gets something and comes back. If it's got more nitrate coming back, it's going to bring more nitrate coming back. I mean, so that's what we see in a condensed version. We did last year, quite a bit. And the one thing that spurred me on is like we've done all kinds of tissue testing with Kelly's, and we've done all kinds of applications. Our tissue samples pretty well, they were what they were with Kelly. And they never really changed a whole lot, that's where they were. And you watch the crop grow and you watch what you're doing out there and you see things like those pictures and you're like, what in the world is going on? Because there's got to be a story to it. And you can see your fluctuations with sap a lot better, especially in the micronutrient world. I mean, micronutrients are the untold story of growing crops. I mean, they literally are. And we don't use them enough. We made an application this year where we put on a quart of boron, pint of copper, pint of iron, and a pint and a half of zinc before tassel. Because the saps are just, and if you go down all the physiological things that those things do, we could put 200 pounds of nitrogen on there, but if you don't have iron, available iron, or copper, you're gonna get about 20% of your use efficiency out of it. Because those two things are so important in the enzymatic reactions that process that nitrogen that if you don't have enough of them, you're never gonna get anywhere, unfortunately.
Well, thanks, Mike, for coming and sharing.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.